Hello everyone, Jake here. Today we're going to talk about 10 resin and epoxy tips and tricks that I wish I knew when I started as a beginner. We're going to get right into it. The first thing is going to be safety. A lot of times in my videos when I'm mixing this stuff, I don't use the respirator because I'm talking on camera. But when I don't have the camera on, I'm using this, and I use epoxies that don't put off a smell. If they put off a smell, that's I would consider bad. Not my shop. The other thing is gloves. I use 5mm nitro gloves and 7mm for bigger jobs, or if I'm working on something rough. I use them sparingly. I try to use them as long as I can because of the pandemic. They're harder to get, they're more expensive. That's all I'll say about that. And of course, safety glasses. And I'll go ahead and put these on for the remainder of this video. The gloves, even though when you're pouring, you'll have the gloves on, and then afterwards, after it's out of the pressure pot or whatever, if you mess with it when it's curing, you get that stuff on your fingers and touch your eyes, it will burn. And I know it'll burn because I've done it. So I make sure even when I'm working on it, as it's in the curing process, I still wear gloves, and I still go in and wash my hands before I touch my face. Number two is read the directions. As simple as that sounds, a lot of people don't do it, and then you end up mixing it wrong, or you think you have more working time than you do. A lot of times it'll be right on the label. This one here is ALUMILITE Clear Slow. It tells you right here in big print 12 minutes of working time and demold in 4 hours. And it has a lot of other information down here. This one is liquid diamonds. All it says is 2-to-1 ratio. Well, I know that you have to go to the website to get all the directions on this. Is it by weight, by volume? And I know just by me using it that it's weight and volume, and I've looked it up before. So if it's not on the label, you might have to do some research or whatever like that, but read the directions. It will tell you everything you need to know. It'll tell you pot life, which is working time, when to demold it, how to mix it, what ratios do you do it by weight or by volume. And it all seems overwhelming, but when you just get one of them and you look at it and you read the directions on this one, and then it'll become clear and more simple, and you'll have a better understanding of what's going on. So number two is let's read the directions. Number three is measuring and mixing. And that's it kind of overlaps the second one, but we're going to talk about it again, measuring and mixing. So if it needs to be by weight, you're going to do it by weight. I know the ALUMILITE Clear Slow is by weight, so I have a scale. And then when you mix it, I always have these silicone spatulas, and it's because they go up against the edge of the bowl, or whatever you're mixing in, the containers that you're mixing in, it goes up against it, it scrapes the side. So like if you just put, say, part A in here, and then you put part B in here, and you just mix the middle of it and never touch the sides, the stuff that was on the sides is not going to be mixed up. So whenever you do your cast, you're going to have parts of it that aren't mixed and aren't going to solidify, and the chemical reaction is not going to occur. So I use these, and it scrapes the sides, and you mix it. If you're going to use a pressure pot, then you don't really need to worry about mixing it fast or whatever. If you have some epoxy or resin that doesn't need a pressure pot, then you need to mix it slower and not introduce bubbles into it. So mixing and measuring. Number four is the different kinds of resins or epoxies. ALUMILITE has a real good video on the technical differences between resins, epoxies, urethanes, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into that. This is a beginner course. They have a really good video. I'm not going to be able to explain it any better than them. So how I see it is resins have a faster working time, which is ALUMILITE Clear Slow. You can pour deep with it, but you need a pressure pot and you need to weigh it, and you can make things like this with that. Super cool. You pour it, a few hours later you pull out of the pressure pot, and then it sands really well or whatever, and turns out pretty cool projects. Epoxy resin here, liquid diamonds, You don't have to weigh it, you don't have to use a pressure pot, but you have to wait. It gets a lot hotter. There's a few things you have to wait for it. I just did a video on that, the difference between doing colors in these, and it'll be below. These are both for river tables or deep pours. This is a deep pour epoxy resin from rivertableepoxy.com, and of course this is ALUMILITE's deep pour, and I've used both of them. They're both awesome. And then after you get done with that, this stuff here, ALUMILITE Clear Cast Plus, is a coating epoxy. So after you get done making something, say even this bowl, if I wanted to turn it, tumblers and things like that, if you wanted to turn that and then coat it with the coating epoxy, super cool. So basically you need to know what you want to do first before you want to go figure out which kind of resin or epoxy you want to use. If you're going to make a bowl, then you probably want, even Total Bolt makes some good stuff, and ALUMILITE Clear Slow, the liquid diamonds will work too. But you need to know what you want to do before you go figuring out which resins you want to use. There's tons of information out there on them, and that's about that. Number 5 is the size of your pour will determine the time you have to work with it. And what I mean by that is, and it doesn't matter if you're doing ALUMILITE or liquid diamonds or any of the other ones, if you mix something this size, it's going to have more of a chemical reaction, and it's going to get hotter faster than mixing up this amount, if that makes sense. So normally what I do is, this takes about an hour to get up to temperature that I want to pour it, and I have swirling videos on each one of these. They'll be below. So these need to go to a certain temperature. So if I mix this up for a couple minutes and then divvy it up to smaller portions, separate this into smaller portions only after a few minutes, these smaller portions are going to take way longer to heat up than if I would have just left them in here. That makes sense. With that being said, if I'm using ALUMILITE and it says I have 12 minutes and I mix something this size, this is a couple 100 grams, then I'm probably going to have around that 12 minutes or maybe even longer. If I mix something this big, then let's say 2,000 grams, then I'm not going to have the time. That 12 minutes probably just turned into 10, because there's so much more of a chemical reaction going to happen in a amount this big versus something this big. I hope that's clear. If there's any questions, hit up the comments below. We're halfway through it. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you that I do this stuff all the time. I do lives on occasion on the channel, and I do lives once a month on my Patreon. So if you're interested in beginner style tutorial videos, then go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like button on this video, and let's move on. Number 6, the temperature in your shop will greatly affect the pot life of your resin. So for instance, I like it about 68, 69 in here, and then so this will be about 12 minutes, somewhere around there. And if it's 71 degrees, I lose at least a minute of working time. And the same is true for this, probably worse for this. I did a live last month, and it was 71 in the shop instead of the 68 I usually have it, and I was rushing to get everything done. So try to have wherever you're casting at a consistent temperature, so you know how much time you have in the particular resin or epoxy that you're using. Number 7, moisture and air will mess up your castings. I'll just say this real quick. This is a burl, and this is a lot of what people use. This is super light. It's almost like a sponge, and it's not all the way dry. So if I was to just cast this, you're going to get air and moisture problems all in your cast. I'll show a clip of my worst one, but that takes stabilizing to do this. And even after you stabilize it, when you get ready to cast it, you still need to put it in the oven and kind of get the surface moisture off of it. And that's what happened in my football project. So stabilizing is an advanced thing, I think. So I'm going to put a link to that video up there, and I'll put one down below. and you can check that out. But you need to know that moisture and air will mess up your cast. And how you get around it is this one, for instance, is a burl and it's not stabilized. All I did, and the resin in the center is clear slow, and all I did was I coated this burl both sides with clear slow, and I waited till it was almost set up. If you leave it to where it's tacky, then you can go ahead and cast it and it'll adhere to it and you don't need to sand it. If you let it dry all the way, then you need to sand it. So this one, I put some on there, and when I felt it was about to start getting hard, you could still fingerprint it or whatever. I put it in a mold and poured it, and it turned out fantastic. There's no air or moisture problems in it. I'll give you guys a close-up. It turned out great. So that's the way you get around it. And in fact, when you do a river table, that's how you do it, is you coat it. I coat it with whatever resin I'm gonna use. I'll coat it with that. And there's some faster curing stuff too that you could use. But the point is, you need to coat it so that the moisture and air is locked in. So when you do your big pour, the moisture and air doesn't get into your deep pour resin. I hope that makes sense. Once again, if there's any questions, comments below. Number 8 is mold making or form making. I made a video on that for beginners, and I'll talk about it a little bit right here. Once again, that'll be down below. Here's some ready-made bought ones. This one's from P-Town Subby. It fits right in a Harbor Freight pressure pot. It's all good. These are from Lizard Blanks. They're already made. You're gonna pay a little bit for them. HDPE is a little bit expensive right now because of the pandemic, but you can make your own, and I show you exactly how to do it in that video. I've made these silicone molds myself. So basically the point is, it's super easy, and I'll even go show you. I have a mold made up for a river table right now, and I'm going to show you that. Here's a sneak peek of the table I'm making. It's going to be a yin and yang scary face table. I'm going to do a lot of cool stuff to it, but building this form, it's melamine. Of course, I'll have it all cleaned up. I'm going to cover it with Tyvek tape, and you could even use this regular packing tape. And before I'm going to take this all apart, and before I put it back together, I'm going to use silicone caulking all around it, put it together, and then I'm still going to do all of the corners, because this needs to be watertight, because that deep pour epoxy is just like water. So if this isn't watertight, you're going to be wasting a lot of money worth of resin. So it's just a little quick thing on building a form for a river table. Number 9 is sanding and polishing. Once you get your project to a shape that you want it, or you pull it out of a mold, a lot of times if you're just doing jewelry and things like that, they come out shiny. No big deal, and you can put some coating resin on it like we talked about before, and you're done. But sanding and polishing is a whole nother thing, and I might be one of those weird people that I actually like it because I get to see this thing come to life. I did a video on that in depth on how to do every little step. There's always 100 ways to skin a cat. I'm just going to show you one of them on that video. And basically, you sand to 1,000, you use abrasive paste, and then you get on the buffing wheels. There's a 3-step buffing process that I do. It's really not that bad once you do it a couple times and you figure out what you need to do. But it's a necessary thing. But wrap your brain around it. Just kind of have a good attitude about doing it, and then it becomes a lot better. That video I tried to do some egg shapes. Some people think they look like something else, but I show you step by step on how to sand and polish to look like glass. So go over there and watch that one, and pretty informative video. Next. The number 10 thing I would tell somebody wanting to get into resin casting is go for the quick win. Do something smaller. Don't try to do something complex like some life casting and all that kind of stuff. You can do it, but if it goes wrong, then you're going to get disappointed. This is a lot of material in here. This is a lot of material and stabilized wood, and it's a complicated thing. Pen blanks. I show pen blanks a lot, not because I like making pens or anything like that. It's just so that I can show, it's a good tutorial piece, and you end up with pretty cool stuff, and then somebody can make something cool out of it. I get to teach using pen blanks, and I give them away on Instagram, by the way. So if you don't follow me over there, come and win some pen blanks. These are a quick win for me. I just get to pour, I get to play with colors, I get to give them away and have a good time with people that watch the channel. Here, I'm going to show you a close-up of the fail on this one. I talked about air earlier. This figurine body had air in it. I didn't know it was hollow, so it is 4,000 grams of mistake. The point being, don't start off doing something huge. Get you a little bit of resin. It doesn't matter what kind. Get you your resin, read the directions, get familiar with it, make little things that you can be proud of and that you can gain confidence in moving forward. Bonus tip is, we all watch everybody else on YouTube or Instagram and places like that, and they do fantastic work. The advice I have is, don't be intimidated by that. Be inspired by it and go and once again start small, but don't think that you're going to be them the first try. They didn't. I guarantee you they didn't do that masterpiece their first try. It took practice and maybe a lot of mistakes to get there. So the advice is, be you, don't be them. You're the only you that you can be. So there's my 10 tips and a bonus. If it's your first time here, go ahead and subscribe and all that stuff. If you noticed, I left pressure pots and vacuum chambers out of this one. I believe it deserves its own video comparing them. But my short answer is, pressure pot's the way to go. And then stay tuned for the comparison video between the pressure pot and the vacuum chamber. You guys be good and have a nice day, and we'll see you next time.